Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's class, 3rd of July, 2023. For anybody who's joining us for the first time, I'll just say a few words about the format. We will be doing some chanting, slightly experimentally. We'll be chanting the dedication of offerings in Pali, and then the recollections of the Buddha, the Dhamma and Sangha in English, just to understand what we're chanting and not just rely on the Pali. And then we'll take the 3 refuges and determine the 5 precepts, after which we will sit quietly, possibly a little bit of guided meditation, and then there'll be an opportunity to reflect on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and have an opportunity also to hear what people might wish to say or share or ask. And we'll be ending at 7:30, so we have an hour and a half. 7:30, yeah, 8, 6:30 to 8. So we'll end at 8 o'clock, or give or take a minute or two. So I will light the candle behind me and light and also a stick of incense, and bow to the shrine, and you can do so at home if you wish to. It's quite optional, and then we'll take it from there. So again, warm welcome to everybody, and we'll go off. Randula will kindly screen share for us. So, dedication of offerings. On page 18, if you're reading from the chanting book. Yoso Bhagava Araham Samma Sambuddho Swakato Yena Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipanno Yasa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Tamayam Bhagavantam Sadamam Sasangham Ime Sakare Yataraham Aropite Abhipujayama Sadhuno Bhante Bhagava Suchiraparini Bhutopi Machima Janatanukam Pamanasa Ime Sakare Dugatamanakara Bhute Patikanhatu Ahakam Digaratam Hitaya Sukhaya Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho sangham namami. We now go to the recollection of the Buddha on page 20. Sorry, 21. We'll do it in English. Now let us chant the recollection of the Buddha. A good word of the Blessed One's reputation has spread as follows. He, the Blessed One, is indeed the Pure One, the perfectly enlightened One. He is impeccable in conduct and understanding, the accomplished One, the knower of the worlds. He trains perfectly those who wish to be trained. He is teacher of gods and humans. He is awake and holy. And I'll go to the recollection of the Dhamma in English on page 25. The Dhamma, now let us chant the recollection of the Dhamma. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, leading inwards, to be experienced individually by the wise. And I go to the recollection of the Sangha on page 27. Now let us chant the recollection of the Sangha. They are the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, who have practiced directly, who have practiced insightfully, those who practice with integrity. That is the 4 pairs, the 8 kinds of noble beings. These are the Blessed One's disciples. Such ones are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respect. They give occasion for incomparable goodness to arise in the world. Now we go to page 128 from memory. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. To the Buddha I go for refuge. To the Dhamma I go for refuge. To the Sangha I go for refuge. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. For the second time to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the second time to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the second time to the Sangha I go for refuge. Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. For the third time to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the third time to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the third time to the Sangha I go for refuge. We go through to the 5 precepts. Anatipata viramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinadana viramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kamesu mechachara viramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musavada viramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Surameraya vacha pamadatana viramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugatim yanti, silena bhagasampada, silena nibutim yanti, tasma silam visodaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is a source of true wealth. Virtue is a source of peacefulness. Therefore, let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Chanting the refuges and determining the 5 precepts habitually on a regular basis is a very good way of establishing also automatic connection, association with something that is good, uplifting and supportive on the path to awakening. The fact that it's quite repetitive, that it doesn't create too many musical variations, helps embed it in one's brain, in one's mind, and eventually in one's heart. It creates some very powerful associations which one will generally connect with one's practice, time for reflection, recollection, being on one's own perhaps, just reflecting on life, on Dhamma in general. And it's like a sort of signal after a while. One may find that if one's going through a difficult time in life, if one's been chanting the refuges and precepts and the dedication of offerings frequently enough, it's actually quite comforting. Whatever worries one may be going through, giving rise to anxiety or uncertainty, if you do the chanting in the morning before the full day begins, you'll find your mind and heart will settle, just be reassured by something familiar and associated with good people, good teachings, good practice. So for a critical mind which might dismiss chanting as unimportant, well, that's just another point of view. But the whole purpose of rites and rituals and observances is to make connection in the phenomenal world with the transcendent, with the Dhamma and the way things are. I find that just chanting in Pali sometimes on my own, often if it's complicated with a chanting book in my hand, just creates some nice associations, takes one's mind off whatever daily concerns one may have to face on a given day. Because it's voiced, spoken out loudly, it helps cut through other trains of thought. That's why it's seen as a preliminary to good practice. It sort of sets the foundations in place, puts a platform in place. Where we can just sit quietly, as we will now for a bit. Just being present in the moment, to the body, to the feelings of the body. Noticing our mind state, and noticing the contents of the mind, which might be listening to the words that is being spoken, what they might mean to us individually. But the real anchor, the real connecting point with the present moment is the body. So lowering one's center of attention on the head, down to the heart region and the belly region, and the sensations of sitting on a cushion or a chair, weight of the body, and taking in 1 or 2 or 3 deeper in-breaths, and allowing the body and mind to relax on the out-breath, on the exhalation. We observe, we note, but we don't criticize. Just allow the mind to settle in the sensations of the present moment. If the mind is agitated, then 2 or 3 second pause after the end of the exhalation can help calm the mind. If we're sleepy and tired after a long day, then perhaps opening the eyes and being very conscious of the breath will help keep one present. So observing the breath, noticing the flow of air through the nostrils, down the windpipe, into the heart region and the lungs. Noticing the belly, and the movement of the belly as it responds to the diaphragm. Breathing in, breathing out quite naturally. And then you can just say to yourself, letting go. So whatever arises is also allowed to cease. If we get lost in a train of thought, and we notice it, we come back to the breath, to the body. We notice not only the sensations, feelings, we also notice that we are noticing, that we're aware of what we're experiencing. The miracle of knowing. A miracle of awareness. The emptiness, where all sensations and phenomena arise and cease.
As we come to the end of the formal sitting, ring the gong, the bell. Those of you sitting online heard that wonderful bell? Good, I see a few nodding heads. That's good to know. Noticing the transition from sitting quietly, hopefully absorbed, not in one's thoughts, but in one's body and breathing. The transition to open eyes, objects, colors, textures. And in this room, few people.
noticing the change that it brings about, just sitting quietly for 30 odd minutes or so. How more aware we become of the silence, of the stillness, not only externally but hopefully internally as well. I remember when I first came across Buddhist teachings, I was smitten. Couldn't quite believe what I'd come across. And I started practicing. In those days, in the 60s, early 60s, there was a very popular item of furniture called a beanbag. I don't know if they still exist or not. And I remember making myself comfortable in this big beanbag in our living room, and trying to sit quietly. And it just seemed sort of the right thing to do. I remember on one occasion I tried to stop thinking by willpower. I lasted about 10 seconds, I think, and then experienced such a strong reaction. And I realized I had a really long way to go. And I remember being asked by my parents what I was doing, what this meditation was all about. And I couldn't really give them a coherent answer. Why, how could I explain logically and rationally why one sits quietly for 20 minutes, half an hour, longer, just observing the breath? My mother considered it just sort of belly watching. And I've learned with time that actually it's a wonderful practice to sit quietly. And what does it do? Well, it basically challenges our attraction to objects and our engagement with objects that come and go, pleasant or unpleasant. It teaches us patience, which is the great austerity. Why is patience so important? Patience with so little happening. It's to draw us away, allow us to exist without this fascination with objects, with phenomena, with thoughts, with feelings, narratives, memories, future stories. Because patience is a place where the timeless can be discovered. We have to extricate ourselves from our fascination with time to connect with the timeless, the ineffable. So initially this can be a theoretical understanding, but with repeated practice it can be realized and is known immediately, directly in one's own experience. And of course regularity again, or frequency, is really important. If we don't do it on a regular basis, we can only make so much progress. It's a bit like swimming. If you only swim a really little, just a bit of a doggy paddle, you're never going to learn how to swim in the swimming pool. That's a very crude example. But patience is something that can be cultivated. Attention can be cultivated. So actually the practice of sitting quietly, of just sitting, is an enormously transformative practice. It highlights all the reactions we experience when we stop being involved with external objects, with phenomena, which is when the internal phenomena manifests and all the reactions. We are so attracted and attached to objects of one type or another that we suffer from withdrawal symptoms when we don't indulge, don't go along with the thoughts, with the narratives, with the speculation. And it's precisely those reactions which are a sign of good practice. We often think, oh, I've had a terrible sit, suffering anger, frustration, pain, discomfort. Terrible practice. No, it's actually doing the work of highlighting our reactivity to a situation that we may not want or like. In other words, it directly confronts craving for sensation, craving for experience, craving for existence. And of course, everything that surrounds sitting practice, the bowing, the chanting, the collective process of sitting, everyone's on a retreat or in a group, that's all sort of surrounding, supporting system, experiencing reflective states of mind, chanting about metta, mudita, karuna, upekkha, experiencing different states of mind, higher states of mind. It's all part of this journey of self-inquiry into consciousness, into our mind and body system. And of course, Dhamma teaching is so important because it points our attention to things and explains things, initially on an intellectual level, which we can then digest and gradually, as it were, really know directly for ourselves. So learning to be with silence, learning to be with situations that aren't really 100% comfortable, and developing this capacity to relinquish, to accept, to let go. It's liberating. It's liberating. And it eventually brings us to the realization that our real nature is awareness, not self. That this identity that is constructed through conditioning as we grow up and function in the world is just a concoction of factors, of elements, which come together, around which we develop a sense of self, and we take things personally. Well, essentially, there is no self. There's just awareness, in which a conditioned self arises, functions, and dies and falls away, and then is recreated. So when we're sitting for longer periods of time, we have this opportunity to cultivate attention and step out of looking for sensations, looking for phenomena, and just know that we know. Have this immediate knowing, which is an a priori state of presence, of just being in the moment and observing the flow of life with all its forms as it arises and ceases in what we call our awareness. We call it our awareness. It doesn't belong to us. We arise in awareness. Our thoughts arise in awareness. Our feelings arise in awareness. States of mind, our memories, our thoughts. It all arises in awareness, not in an identity. And that's what the teachings are really pointing to in one way or another all of the time. So this teaching of no self, or not self, non-self, depending how you want to phrase it, is actually pointing to our real nature. And it's the most wonderful teaching, because it puts aside or reduces the importance of the I, me and mine, around which our phenomenal life revolves so much. So as we're on this path, we sort of we experience two realities. The reality of conditioned existence. We observe our body, our feelings, our sensations, our thoughts, our sense of identity. We relate to other people, have to deal with the conditions of the world, paying bills, dealing with awkward people, with nice people, dealing with the weather, being bombarded with news of the world, the state of the world, the wars, climate change. All those things affect us inevitably because we are part of this phenomenal world. Our bodies are, our minds are, our thoughts are. But where is all this happening? Where is it all arising? Where is this experience arising? So we reflect on that. And we realize that it's arising in this sense of being, the sense of being present. And that this phenomena comes and goes, all of it, without exception. But what doesn't go is the knowing. The knowing is always present. So it's always accessible. If we get lost in a narrative of some kind, a storyline, or a reactive process with a friend or a neighbor or a work colleague, they can easily crowd out everything else and become a dominant feature of our particular experience in life. But if we learn how to stop, sit, notice, come into the present, the intensity of that drama diminishes. It takes a bit of practice, but it diminishes. It's not about suppressing what's happening. It's just shifting attention from what is happening to the knowing of the happening. So we become witness to the experience, as opposed to becoming an engaged participant in what is being experienced. That moment, that pause, that stepping out of the entanglement is freedom. It allows us to let go of whatever negative or positive emotions we may be having. It allows us to see things with greater equanimity, greater balance, greater context, greater perspective. And that gladdens the heart. What does gladden the heart mean? It means there's an ease, a sense of inner well-being, of being able to let go. Where this burden of being somebody is put down. Initially temporarily perhaps, because it gets reactivated. Someone calls our name, out of habit we'll instinctively respond. Someone shouts at us with anger, there'll be an immediate, instinctive, quite natural reaction. But with practice of observing and witnessing, we notice the reaction arise, but we don't have to act on the reaction. So we have some freedom. We can choose whether to engage or not engage. We can choose whether to say sorry, acknowledge the situation, if necessary ask for forgiveness or back off, and disentangle ourselves from something which could be confrontational and distressing. So the Buddhist teachings are there as pointers, guidelines, signposts, bringing our attention to a value system which is based on the transcendent, not based on worldly achievement or praise or blame. It's pointing to freedom. Freedom from what? From suffering, from unnecessary suffering. We can't avoid the suffering of the world in terms of physical aches and pains, aging bodies, sickness, old age, and death. That can't be avoided. Whether it's Jesus or Buddha, they died, the bodies died. Our bodies will die as well. With all the thought processes, they will die as well. But we can know that, and know that what is coming into being is phenomena which ceases being at some point. When we learn to accept that on the smaller bits, it's easier to accept it on the bigger things that we experience in life. What does it do to us as a personality? Well, we become more accepting, hopefully friendlier to be with, nicer to be around. Why? Well, one just has to meet anybody who is centered, calm, present, non-aggressive, non-assertive, open, friendly. It generates a similar response, of friendliness, of openness, but also, I've noticed, curiosity. I've always been interested in the teachers that I've had to see how they operate, how they function, where are they coming from. And when you've been with a teacher for a certain length of time, you get to know their habits, their patterns, but you also get some continuity of knowing, which allows you to make a judgment and say, yes, I'm with a good teacher here, someone who's actually teaching me something. And we can learn that from not only teachers, but from anybody, because life is teaching us all of the time, teaching us the three truths. Three truths of anicca, of impermanence. We just have to observe our states of mind, observe the world, observe anything, see that it's changing all of the time. And this change gives rise to suffering. It gives rise to suffering because some of the things that emerge in this changing process we like, and we get it, and then we lose it because it changes. That's dukkha, suffering. The direct, immediate experience of everyday life. There's always suffering in existence. Not all of the time, but it's built into the system. And of course, this primary teaching of not self or non-self. That this isn't happening to a person, it's happening in a field of experience where we have this sense of identity attached to a sense of an I, me, and mine. And we realize that I, me, and mine can never be fully happy, can never find fulfillment or real peace. Peace can only be found when we let go of the I, me, and mine. So we observe the I, me, and mine, but aren't beholden to it. It's not about getting rid of it, or killing it, or suppressing it. It's just not acting from a perspective of I, me, and mine without some reflection, without seeing and being aware of the knowing. So we observe the interactions of everyday life. We observe the act and the consequence of the act, whether it be a word or a speech or an action. And through trial and error, we learn how to become, quote unquote, better, more integrated, more harmoniously integrated individuals. Not as a personal achievement, but just as a normal process of growth, of maturation. It's like an evolution. We're here to evolve in our individual lives. And all the precepts and all the guidelines and all the pointers are there to help us. All the wonderful chants that we have in the chanting book, they're all teachings from the Dhamma of the Buddha. So I offer those few reflections, and be very happy to hear where you might be, what you might want to share or ask, whether it be in the room here or online, on screen. Because these meeting opportunities really are a wonderful opportunity to ask questions and to spend time with like-minded people reflecting on one's life. This can be done privately, but some of it can be shared. And the questions can be shared as well, because other people benefit. Can't promise that I'll answer all your questions, but I'll do my best. Because the nice thing about being on a path of practice for many years is that one does learn quite a lot. One also realizes how much there is learned, that the learning never ends. And having an open mind, being curious, being interested in life, not accepting the limitations of other people, of society, but being open to the possibility that one can be free and can be happy and at peace. So I'm open to anything that people may want to say. And if not, we can just sit quietly. That's fine as well. Yes, sir. We have a question which I'll repeat.
You just mentioned like-minded people. I think I often find there's a kind of reaction when you're out in the world at the moment that you look around and you don't see much of it. Even just walking here, 45 minutes of walking here. And then I question that reaction and think, well, I should be more accepting. But I just feel so at odds with what seems to be, because I don't know what's going on in people's heads, but what seems to be the priorities of other people's lives. As you go about your own difficult existence. But there doesn't seem to be many people who might be, well, maybe there's an increasing number, but to what end and in context.
Well, the point that's being raised and made is that in reference to being with like-minded people, I suppose if I was to summarize it, is how few there seem to be in the world in everyday life going around. One doesn't want to make the judgment, but one feels a little bit at odds, different value system, and how challenging that can be. Yeah. Well, the moment we start questioning social values, we're on our own often. It's the painful process of individuation. When we connect with the value system, which doesn't reflect or doesn't tie in or go along with acquisition, with stress, with greed, with being caught up in the world, I suppose the first thing that comes to mind really when one sees other people who aren't like-minded is that they're probably suffering, just as we are suffering, but maybe without a way out of the suffering or without any pointers. That might make it a bit less conflicted. Because the more one speaks to people as one meets them, one finds that they are preoccupied with all sorts of issues and dramas of life. Many of them feel very small, very, very, very insignificant in the bigger picture of things, but yet very preoccupying. So I think accepting the fact that suffering is endemic, that suffering is part of everybody's life, might elicit a bit of mudita, a bit of compassion, or a bit of metta, actually. But it is challenging, which is why it is so important to have like-minded people, a few friends in one's life, why spiritual friendship is so important, to actually have a connection with someone or others, whether it be a small group such as this or another group. But it does come down to this fact that it is, certainly in my experience, a very lonely path a lot of the time. But it's a very enriching path. I don't know whether I'm answering your question at all, but
Nick, it's Madeline here.
Hello, Madeline.
Hello. I was just going to say how interesting and instructive it is to hear you talking about being the observer of phenomena arising and falling away. And I find that I do that with my mind as well, and it's really, really helpful for me to be able to think when thoughts occur in my mind. I am not those thoughts.
Absolutely.
I simply see the thoughts arising, and passing away. And this was something that I learned from Ajahn Ahimsaka when he had a retreat. And it was a really enlightening thing to hear. Yes, of course. And I find that capacity to be able to observe things in the mind and just see them pass away is just...
It is. It's
very
wonderful.
helpful.
It's an amazingly helpful. It's not only helpful, it's actually liberating.
Yeah.
And we see how entangled we get in our thoughts and in our emotions and in situations and past judgment. There's always a knowing that that's happening. And that knowing is that screen, that place where it's all happening. So we have to come back to the knowing. What am I knowing right now? Which is why the practice of labeling is so useful. It's a Burmese tradition of labeling. But when a thought arises, you just say thought, thinking. When a feeling arises, feeling, sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, talking, walking. Just simply making a direct description statement of what is actually happening, but not getting lost in the content of what is happening.
Yeah.
It's magic. It's absolutely magic. It's a way out of so much unnecessary suffering. Suffering on the cushions, suffering in relationships, suffering in the world, because we're just this field, this empty space where all this experience is arising. That's what we really are. The emptiness is what shunyata is about, or sunyata. It's emptiness. And in that emptiness is the arising of phenomena. And the phenomena is coming and going, but the emptiness, it's not an object, so it's not present as an object, but it's where it all happens. That's our real nature.
Yes.
And the more we're able to let go of attachment to what arises in our consciousness and our awareness, the more liberated and free we are. But we've got to be very careful, because the mind is very, very subtle in creating an identity. So even when we discover this revelation, my gosh, I'm just the witness, just the phrasing of it, I am the witness, already becomes an identity. And one can create a sort of artificial state of dissociation. I'm just the witness. I'm not affected by anything. Things come and things go. I'm really cool. I'm really on the ball here. I know what's happening. My knowing is my real nature, my Buddha nature. You see the words my come in, identity coming in, and immediately it corrupts what is correct as an intellectual insight. But what we want to do is to realize what's happening all of the time. Am I kidding myself? How truthful am I in my witnessing? So the moment that fabrication, that concoction of identity arises, warning bells, warning bells. Yeah.
Unhook yourself and go one step backward.
I'm sorry?
Unhook yourself and go one step backward.
Yes, exactly. Come back. What is actually happening? An identity is being created. And the moment you recognize it as an identity, you get a moment, a glimpse of freedom. Right, okay. But you've got to watch this subtle personality view creeping in and hijacking and taking over. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
That's the warning. But thank you, Madeline. Yeah. Yes, a question here from Mariano in the room.
A statement. What I found useful recently was the realization that, when unpleasant things happen, start feeling unpleasant things, we don't need to fix them. Yeah, I mean, there are situations where you've got to do something because there's a real danger or whatever, but most of the time, the instinctive reaction is push away, fix it, feel better again. When in actual fact, they just want to be held and sit and suck them out.
Yeah. The point that's being made for those who are online, if you didn't hear it all, is how reactive we are to our experiences, how instinctively we try to change things when they're not right, push things away when we don't like them, grab them when we do like them. And it's just to essentially we have to know the process, know what's happening. whether we do something about a situation we find ourselves in will always come down to context and some sort of judgment. But that judgment isn't just an intellectual thinking about it. It's also an intuitive, felt sense. Does this feel the right thing to be doing? So it's taking in both the feeling, the intuition, and the reflective thought process. Because sometimes they don't match. You've got to really, and then when you don't know, is to admit, I don't know, and wait and be patient. So we're, in a sense, being challenged all the time in the flow of phenomena of how to respond, how to react. And many of you will be familiar with this, but some of you may not. The difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is instinctive. It's literally a reaction, an action of some kind in reaction to something that's happened. Responding has a different quality to it. Responding is more reflective, more considered, more spacious, more, you could say, enlightened, more contextualized. So it takes in a bigger picture. And by taking in a bigger picture, hopefully is the right thing to say or do or not. So if you notice yourself reacting, your stomach starts churning up, or the tightness in the chest, or the jaw gets gripped because something is happening, pause. Be careful what you say, what you do, how you say it, how you do what you're going to do or not do. Don't trust instinctive reactions. Sometimes one has to act on them much, much faster than thought would allow. Getting out of the way of a bus or a bicycle or a car, grabbing hold of someone who's losing their balance. Those are instinctive reactions which have to go faster than thought often. Because life, that's how we're designed. We're designed for these instant, very, very sort of early brain reactions which are faster than thought, driven by the amygdala, which is described in neurological terms as fast and dirty. It works fast, but doesn't always work necessarily very accurately. So if there is time to reflect, to pause, to consider, worth doing. At the same time, not get lost in endless speculation about all the various options, because the thinking mind will throw many, many options, many alternative versions of what one can and can't do. And then that just becomes obsessive thinking, proliferation of thought, which is unnecessary and unhelpful. So if we caught ourselves getting caught up in repetitive thinking, looped thinking, again, what am I knowing? What's knowing? What is known at this moment? Looped thinking, right. Come back to the present. What's happening right now, here and now? Right now, it's looped thinking. What's the body say? So we just do a scan of the whole system, of the body, the sensations of the body, mind states, because we've noticed the contents of the mind, which is just proliferation, and all the problems that proliferation gives rise to. At which point, right, okay, we can stop, because we've seen it more objectively. We've put it into context. With our understanding of the teachings, we stop, pause, take an in-breath, breathe in, breathe out, let go. Breathe in, breathe out, let go. And wait for the eruption of all these thoughts, feelings, and emotions to settle. This doesn't make us into zombies, by the way, yes? We're still human. We can laugh, we can smile, we can tell each other jokes, be friendly, be spontaneous, be in the flow of the moment, but with this beautiful, bigger perspective of being based on kindness, on understanding, on wisdom, and on true well-being. So, of course, when you have a statement like that of Longpor's made, to be the knowing, there's so much significance. It's something to meditate on. What does it mean to be the knowing? Be the knowing. The past is a memory. The future is unknown. Now is the knowing. Core teaching of the Buddha. Found in different variations on the same theme throughout the teachings. Now is the knowing. Such a powerful statement. Because now is only now. There's only now. It's the only thing that exists. And it doesn't exist. It's just phenomena arising in the now. The now doesn't change, but the contents of the now are changing all of the time. Whether it be breathing sensations, cats coming and going, doors opening and closing, moths coming and eating your carpet and then flying away. Something's happening all of the time. So now is always now. It's just the contents of the now are changing. So now is the knowing. We are the knowing, not as a personality, it's not owned. It's just known. And we all know it. As we're sitting, all of us, whether we're sitting in our rooms, sitting in the room here, we know. What do we know? Well, each one of us will have our individual experience. Feet on the ground, wearing socks, trousers, skirt, whatever it might be. Breathing, listening to a voice. Wondering, thinking of what's for supper or what's going to be on the news tonight. Whatever it is. But there's a knowing that that's what's happening. So simple. Simple but very, very profound and transformative, life-changing. So I'm aware of time. Change, yes. Change in the now. I think it'd be nice to find a chant, an uplifting chant. Yep, I think I'm getting where I'm looking for. Verses of Sharing and Aspiration, page 33. Thank you, Randula. It's nice to have professional support and backup. It's a lovely, lovely chant, this. So what are we doing in chanting the verses of Sharing and Aspiration? Well, the text will tell us what we're doing. We're sharing it with others, all those we love, don't love, all beings, all of existence. So if you can mute yourselves as you're at home, and you might hear us chanting here in the shrine room at the Buddhist Society. Now let us chant the verses of Sharing and Aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life, may they soon attain the threefold bliss, and realize the deathless. through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. We'll do the closing chant on page 28, the closing homage. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Nasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Right, well that brings our class to a close. Thank you for joining us. It's been lovely having you, both in person and online. We have 2 more classes this term. Next week's class is going to be taken by Randula, who most of you, I hope, have come across and got to know. And the week after that, the 17th, will be the last class of this term. And then we'll have what the Buddhist Society calls a summer break. I do believe they're organising some summer retreat. They normally have one. But I hope to see you in 2 weeks' time. And I wish everybody a good evening and a good week ahead until the next class. So thank you very much for coming, and goodbye, everybody. Bye.